This is the Razer Basilisk V3 Pro 35K that launched in October of last year. It's a right-handed, ergonomically shaped mouse that features their second generation Focus Pro 35 optical sensor. In the box you'll find the mouse itself, a 2.4 GHz dongle with its extender, and a 1.9 meter paracord-like cable. The mouse itself comes in at a length of 130mm, height of 42, and width at the grip position of approximately 60, although that's really hard to measure accurately due to that curvature on the left. It's honestly an extremely comfortable mouse though, more so than the G502 for me, and that's because I don't experience any discomfort on the lower part of my thumb when I squeeze. I can palm and claw the mouse well, but at 112 grams it's a little too heavy for fingertip. That said, it's balanced well and has no creaking or rattling to be found. Ultimately, I'd say the Basilisk shape is typically suited to those with medium-sized hands, and that's because those with giant gorilla thumbs may struggle with mice that feature a ledge, and those with tiny hands might find difficulty in reaching the sensitivity clutch button. For me though, I don't accidentally push any of them. I can also easily roll my thumb to actuate, which is great. Its primary buttons are separated from the top shell as well, and they feature subtle comfort grooves, with optical switches underneath that both sound and feel fantastic. Razer have certainly perfected optical switches now, and they have a sufficient amount of pre and post travel that aids in rapid clicking. The mouse wheel features 4-way actuation including middle, left, right and scroll, which also has both tactile and free scrolling modes too. Here's a quick test. Underneath the mouse, you find the optical sensor with a max tracking speed of an inhuman 750 inches per second. You want to use anywhere between 1600 and 3200 dpi of its maximum 35,000 if you decide to buy the hyperpolling dongle for above 1000 Hz up to 8K. That's just to ensure you saturate the higher polling rates of today. And finally, I'd also like to highlight the storage underneath for that dongle, and also the fact that it has Bluetooth, because I really don't know why they've omitted that from some of their other mice. It really can't add any weight or cost, and it's super useful for multiple PC setups, streamers and laptop users. So in terms of testing, as mentioned, we'll do all of ours in wireless at 1000 Hz using that included dongle. So before we dive into Synapse 4.0, I'd recommend checking out the Razer website, look for any firmware updates, just so you're not running into issues that have already been ironed out since launch, and I'll add a link to that in the video description for you. I've been using this since pre-release with the Death Adder V3 and I've had absolutely no problems. You can see I've got my key-like chromas up here as well, and I definitely use it over the third. But the customized tab will give us the ability to rebind any button on the mouse, including full macro functionality and Razer Hypershift, which when enabled gives us a second function on every button on the mouse, except left click unless you've got it bound to something else. Now what's cool is that I don't actually use the sensitivity clutch as a sensitivity clutch or a sniper button, so I could rebind this to be hypershift. Alternatively, if I had a Razer keyboard, I could set the hypershift button on the keyboard, and that would free up every button on the mouse for a secondary function, which is pretty neat. Another neat thing here is that the tactile and free spin scrolling mode is a software toggle for the hardware wheel. So if I set free spin, we have the Interstellar soundtrack terms and conditions scrolling mode, infinitely. I could blow on it forever, but I don't really use that. I just leave it on tactile. So what I could do is I could rebind the scroll mode toggle to something else and give me an extra button on the mouse, which is pretty damn neat. Don't know of any other mouse that does this. The performance tab gives us our DPI steps up to 5, and I've disabled 2 of them. My DPI is 1574 and it's increments of 1 from 100 right the way through to 35,000. You've also got full X and Y, which can be good to try and keep head level. Used to use it back in the day, but not anymore. And I've got 1574 because I've used the sensitivity matcher with my Death Adder V3. So by having 2 mice side by side and moving them together horizontally, it has determined that 1600 on my Death Adder is about 1574 on this mouse. Now that's not to say one is better than the other. Actually, what's true is you could have 2 of the same exact mice with maybe one with brand new mouse feet, another one with slightly worn down, or maybe you replace mouse feet on one and the DPI will be different because the distance from the sensor to the surface matters. Ultimately, it's best to measure your sensitivity, even using this just to be sure, but 1574 came out to be about accurate. And just so you know, I ran it 3 times. It was first 1566, then 1576, and now 1574. So it all depends on how accurately you move both on the same level. If you had like a proper system where you can prop the mice up, I just use the edge of the mouse pad, it'd be ideal. Now you've got polling rate. I'm just using the included dongle, so 125, 500, and 1000. And then under lighting, we've got brightness all the way up to 100. I don't really care about RGB, but I do actually like having RGB on my mouse wheel to some extent, because I can still see that when I'm using the mouse. And if I've got mouse cam at night, you can see it on the webcam as well if I'm streaming. And calibration is pretty cool too. You can see I've got asymmetrical enabled with 5 to 4. Liftoff is when the mouse stops tracking as I lift it. Landing is when it starts tracking as I drop it down. And just take note of the reset, because if you calibrate it on a glass mouse pad or a different mouse pad and you try a certain other one, you might find the cursor doesn't move at all, so you might just need to reset the mouse. It really depends on the surface. If I wasn't using this, I'd leave it on medium. I personally find low too low, as I slightly lean the mouse when tracking, and I sometimes, stop in the middle of movements. For me, 5 to 4, which is somewhere between low and medium, is good. And then finally, we have low power mode. I've set it down to 5. Interestingly, you can't turn it off, which is a bit of a shame. I'd rather the mouse just die than go into low power mode in the worst situation, which maybe sounds counterproductive and is a really bad way to look at it, but that's just me. I think the default was about 30. So yeah, 69% on the battery. Help just shows us our firmware update version and things like that. I've not actually updated yet. I'll do it afterwards if there's one available. You have the ability naturally to factory reset as well. But no complaints with the software. Really, really good. And I really love this feature. I'd like to see them attack maybe mouse acceleration next. First up then, mouse acceleration. And moving our mouse from left to right of the Saturn Pro pad, both slow and fast, shows that we end up in the exact same position. So all good there. This means we can add our own preferred amount of mouse acceleration afterwards if we want. Max tracking speed should also be around 19 meters per second as well, to which I can't get anywhere near, and there are no malfunctions, and I've had no issues on any of the cloth pads I've tried either. In terms of button latency, I'll let human benchmark do the talking. It's not an accurate test per se, and there's the odd outlier in my focus, but there's no issues here and it feels industry leading as expected. There were also no problems with button debounce time, and I was able to perform the variable jump and shoot menu without issue, where your jump height is directly influenced by how long the mouse button is held down, i.e. I can mini jump without issue as that button is released quick enough. This also as a byproduct means there are no issues with full height rocket jumps in Quake, because both mouse 1 and 2 can be pushed down simultaneously without any delay, meaning I always reach maximum height. So how does it perform in game? Well, in short, it's flawless. But then I really don't expect anything less of Razer today. I tested it at 1000Hz in wired, 1000Hz with the included 2.4 GHz dongle, and at 2000 and 4000Hz with the hyperpolling dongle, just not 8K because my PC doesn't handle it well. And again, no issues. I found the Basilisk shape to be super comfortable, and I get a ton of maneuverability for vertical aiming with my wrist thanks to that gradual back slope. Its width is great for gripping onto the mouse without it feeling like a potato as well, and it's not too thin that becomes uncomfortable when palming either. That said though, it's not all gravy, and that weight definitely leaves much to be desired. Naturally today anything over 85 to 90 grams feels heavy, and this is by no means an exception. The curvature on the left side does help to alleviate some of that heaviness which would otherwise be present, but it's still certainly not a mouse that will compete with the Death Adder in fast-paced shooters anytime soon. But then I suppose it doesn't pretend to do that either. This is a mouse that's launched to appeal to as many different individuals all at once. The gamer that wants to buy the hyperpolling dongle and experience 2000 to 8000 Hz over 2.4 GHz, probably playing MMOs, MOBAs or another less tracking heavy game. Then the office worker who wants a reliable Bluetooth mouse to make his life infinitely more enjoyable, swap into a high-performing 2.4 GHz 1000 Hz at home for some cyberpunk, and then the person who just wants something super goddamn beautiful sat on their desk. I'd like to say I was able to record some of the best clips of my life using the mouse as a competitive player, but that just wouldn't be true. I perform well, no doubt about it, and I hit some great shots, and I'd use the mouse if someone told me to as well. Problem is, if given the choice, I'd pick the mouse sat beside me, the Death Adder V3 Pro for competitive shooters, purely for its weight alone. Now if I made any other type of game, or required extra buttons in a game like Fortnite perhaps, so take me back a few years, I'd 100% consider a version of the Basilisk right at the top of the list. This one or otherwise. But yeah, I guess that about wraps it up. It's a great mouse, and besides the weight, I'd lean toward calling it perfect. Thanks to Razer for shipping it out, I really appreciate it, and if you enjoyed the review yourself, make sure to like, subscribe if you haven't already, and stop by my Twitch stream where I broadcast as often as I can. For now though, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.